So there you go. Ginny, I want to welcome you to XpoNorth Digital. This is basically a platform where during this time, we're just going to virtually interview you as if you were at the XpoNorth Festival. So thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. XpoNorth, one of my favorite festivals.
Ooh, we like to hear that. Well, can I ask, because I know you very well, but I'm sure the people watching this may not. Can you just say a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I'm Jenny Brown, and I am a literary agent based in Edinburgh. And I set up the agency 18 years ago,
Wow.
specifically because I wanted to work closely with writers based in Scotland. They don't have to be Scottish born, they don't have to be writing about Scotland, but what I like to do is to meet up often with my writers. And so we have this small office in Edinburgh, in Marchmont, and I work with one other agent, Lucy Dukes, who looks after children and young adult writing and illustration for children. And what we like to think is that we can be based in a small office in Edinburgh and yet be reaching out to readers all over the world.
That's wonderful.
That's the ambition anyway.
But you also, you make it sound so easy and like, of course you want to do that in Edinburgh, but was it an aha moment where you're like, this is what I want to do? Or did it take a while to germinate the idea for you that you want to be in Edinburgh, work with Scottish writers?
I had been working, because my background was working, first of all, I was the first director of the Edinburgh Book Festival, and then I was at the Scottish Arts Council as head of literature for 6 years. And I guess that probably every week when I was at the Arts Council, I'd be phoned up by a writer in the Highlands or Islands or the Borders saying, could I recommend an agent in Scotland? And some of them already had agents, but just felt really remote. Because obviously, 98% of agents in the UK are all London based. And so they felt very remote from those agents. And I just thought there's a real opportunity here to be close to the writers rather than close to the publishers. Yeah. And so the idea of setting up Jenny Brown Associates came about. And to begin with, I think I thought I could represent a very wide range of writing. And I was passionate about children's literature, thought I could do that. But over the years, I've realized that there are so many different genres, so many different editors, and you can only really approach and get an idea of the taste of editors in certain genres. So I have very much focused now on narrative nonfiction, and that's memoir, travel writing, nature writing, and then literary fiction and crime writing. And I think I find it very easy now to know what I'm going to be interested in. Really? It doesn't mean I don't like reading outside those genres myself, but I feel comfortable about knowing how the market's moving for those genres and how I could best work with writers to achieve a sale to publishers.
Are those genres unique to Scotland as well? Do you feel like they're Scottish strengths or not, or just in terms of what's selling and publishing overall, those are the things that are pretty strong?
I think they are. The nonfiction has really come up. And if you look at the recent statistics about what's being sold, I think it's like 40-something% of trade sales are nonfiction. I mean, that includes cookery books and, self-help, etc. But there's a very, very strong emphasis right now on nonfiction. And when we go into a bookshop, you look at those shelves, you can see that what's become kind of smart fiction, smart nonfiction, has become a real sort of section in bookshops. And I think, and in really uncertain times, people go back to books and they're looking for answers.
Yeah.
And your reading can really help, give solace, give some answers. I'm not saying it can always give all the answers. And then conversely, fiction hasn't been doing as well as it used to. I'm not saying it's still about 26% of the overall sales. But I think in past times it used to be much stronger. And there's a tendency, I think, of what readers are looking for in their fiction. If they're going to be spending a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks with a novel, they want to really make that experience work for them. So the sort of novels that are doing well are kind of reading group fiction, like Jessie Burton's The Miniaturist. You know, we have a great story, but we also discover about Holland, you know, in the, what was it, 17th century. So your reading is working for you in that way. And a lot of the books novels that are doing well, you can see that they're offering something else, bigger books rather than being slim books.
That makes sense. Also, Jenny, I want to get into the weeds of, I know a lot of people probably watching this are writers, so I do want to get into the weeds. You read so much, and I want to know in terms of your thoughts about writing and the advice you have for writers. But before we do that, I've always wanted to ask you about the art of being an agent, because there are also people out there who are interested in being agents. And having been through a lot of different kinds of agents, I find you pretty extraordinary. You have this wonderful way of nurturing your writers, and then also having us feel like we have a pretty tough negotiator on our behalf to get what we deserve. And that kind of mix of being nurturing and then also very strong. I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but even like during Christmas, that you sent people books, it was just, you have such a joy and love for it that's so apparent. I want to know, in terms of your advice, if you have any thoughts or philosophies about the art of being an agent.
I think you have to love writing. You have to love reading, and you have to be quite a quick reader.
Do you? How quickly? How quickly?
Yeah, you've got to make decisions pretty fast often. You have to be able to carry a lot of guilt, because you can never be enough. There's not enough agents. There are a limited number of agents, and there are a lot of writers. And at any one time, I'm aware that I should have got back to, maybe 10 or even 20 people that I'm conscious of. But what else do you have to be? Right.
What about self-discipline? You strike me as someone who probably has a lot of self-discipline.
Yes. Yeah, because it's like any creative, isn't it? You're as good as you are when you get up in the morning. And that's how your day is going to be. And you've got to feel pretty focused about what you're going to do and what connections, therefore, you're going to come up with that are going to work for your writers. So that, something might be happening, in France, that you think, oh, now, because of that, perhaps this book will have a better chance of getting a translation deal. And therefore, make that connection. We work with co-agents all over. So we've got co-agents in France and Scandinavia and for America, etc. So they are looking out for our writers and selling our writers' work into their own territories, because they've obviously got the expert knowledge about the publishers there. So there's a lot of that going out. It's really interesting work. And because I had this, decision to be based in Edinburgh and be close to the writers, I do see a lot of my writers. I'm drinking so much coffee, it's not. But, just to be able to catch up with them and, importantly, understand the context in which they're writing. So I travel quite a lot within Scotland to see them or to go to their launches. We had a great launch last year. My favourite launch of the year almost was with a writer called Sarah Jane Douglas, whose memoir, Just Another Mountain, was about how she overcame a lot of difficulties in her own life by taking to the hills of Scotland and then further afield. And it didn't seem appropriate to drink warm white wine in a bookshop for that. So instead, with a brilliant bookseller, Angie Crawford, the three of us went up Mila Buchel at Glenmore and on the day of publication, and we had a tiny little bottle of Prosecco at the very top. It was great.
Jenny, that's
But
wonderful.
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Exactly.
Yeah.
What you enjoy what you do. So,
Mm.
okay, for the writers out there, I hope you're not annoyed with these two questions because you probably get them all the time. But for you, what is advice for good writing? And then the second question would be, for those who don't have an agent, what's a couple of pieces of insight that you could offer to make that process easier for them?
Advice for writers, I think, don't hurry. Good writing does not come quickly. Don't feel in such a rush that you've got to send off your work before you're really ready to. Because on the whole, you've got one chance to pitch to an individual writer, or to an individual agent, or to an individual publisher. And you don't want to spoil that. You know, I've had before now writers getting in touch and saying, I know you wanted the first 3 chapters, I'm sending you all the novel because it gets better by chapter 5 or something. You know, it's got to be great from the absolute outset. Everybody, you know, from me to an editor that I'm pitching it to the rep who's trying to sell your novel into a bookstore, everybody's going to start at the beginning, and they've got to be really hooked by the first page. But you've got to keep that up. You've got to keep that quality up throughout the novel. And so that's why I'm saying don't rush. Now, interestingly, with non-fiction, although fiction has to be sold when you finished it and edited it, maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 times, 5 times, 6 times before it's going to be ready. You know, it is a long-term process. But with non-fiction, it can be sold on proposal. So in that case, you know, you might have your subject, and you have put together a really strong proposal synopsis about what the book's about, why you're the best person to write it, what are the chapters going to be, what is the kind of narrative arc of it, what are the other books on this subject, and why is yours different? And then I would be expecting to see maybe, I don't know, 10, 15,000 words of the book itself. And typically a publisher will make a decision on the basis of a proposal for nonfiction. With Expo, I had this great experience of doing the New Year tweet pitch about 3 years ago. And we just invited writers from all over Scotland to pitch their ideas. And then it was only 140 characters. And one of the pitches was This Golden Fleece, A Very British History of Wool. And I thought, that sounds great. Got in touch with the author. What have you got to show me? Oh, 140 characters long. And that was beginning of January. And then by the time of the London Book Fair, which is in March each year, she had worked up a proposal, just that, the proposal, the first 10 or 15,000 words. And there was such interest in that. There was an auction for it, and the book was published as a super lead title with Granta last September, This Golden Fleece, Very British History of Wool, by Esther Rutter. Yeah.
That's a great triumph. That's a wonderful story.
So that was a debut book for the author. She writes really well, but she'd hit upon a really interesting subject. You know, what does wool mean to us in Britain? How has it shaped our economy, our language? You know, black sheep of the family, spinning a yarn. And then she travels to different parts of the UK looking at wool. Yeah, really, it's done very well.
Oh, Jenny, I really, there's so many more questions I have for you, but we're running out of time. So I have one question, and then you can bring up one yourself, one that I may have not asked. So my last question for you is, you have this great ritual, I know, where you go off to different parts of Scotland in a camper van. So if you were going to bring only one book with you the entire time you're going around in a camper van, what one would you bring for yourself to keep you company?
How long has it got to last me? I fast remember.
let's
I don't
say
want to make it too short.
let's say you're going to have to live with this book a year. Yes.
Therefore, it's got to
It's
be,
your desert island book.
oh, in that case, it's got to be something really substantial. I'd love to reread Middlemarch.
I knew you were going to say that.
Did you?
I totally did, because that is the book I continually want to reread as well. It's brilliant. There are worlds that exist in that book.
Yeah. And I read it when I was studying English at university. So I was probably 19 or 20. And I think, how much more would that book mean to me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the kind of book where I would read a paragraph, I had to put it down. I had to really think about what she was saying to me and then bring it back. And then she also did something that I've never read any other author do, where she wouldn't let you dislike a character. She could go into really the weeds of like the terrible bits about their personality, and then at the very end she'd say, but you're not allowed to not like them. Like,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
great. Really.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good choice.
Yeah.
Vinny,
So that's my camper van book, not my desert island book, my camper van book.
okay, the last one is there. You've done so much chairing and you've been on so many panels. You are like the go-to voice for agents in Scotland. So is there a question that you really was like, someone should ask me this? Because I've been thinking about this for a very long time, whether it's women in publishing, or I know there's a lot about women writers right now, trying to encourage more women fiction writers in Scotland, or where publishing's going, maybe about the why you started or getting back to the roots, anything.
Oh, can I turn that around and ask you a question?
Yes.
Now, so many new writers, when they're approaching me, will say in their submission letter, they've written this novel and it will make a fantastic film. I think it would make a terrific mini series or whatever. And that, to me, I'm always thinking, actually, that is such a specialist area. What makes a book suitable to dramatize? Jessica, you
Ooh,
tell me.
oh no. Because you know what, that hits close to home. I am probably one of those people where like, I see this as a movie, so maybe write a book first. I think I think people who have a visual language in their mind when they write a book, so they can literally see the entire story in front of them, and by writing they are just describing what they see. Perhaps are different kinds of writers than writers are that a little bit more audial.
Mm.
The writers that hear a word and it brings up a feeling. I mean, they're a lot more into the world of words. So maybe first of all, that's why people are like, this is making a brilliant movie, because they're more of a visual creative
Mm.
person. But what makes a good movie from a story? I mean, Jenny, you probably can see within your library of authors and books that you have, which ones get optioned. And I would say, is it surprising to you first about which books get optioned and which don't?
I think what's surprising is how to to make that connection with the production companies who are the ones that are going to be interested. Because I as soon as we've signed up a book and I'm trying to interest a wide range of production companies, but on the whole, the producers find their own material, don't they?
That's so, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
And it's not because I'm sending out reams of info or carefully selecting. It's because something, they read something, they've seen it at the bookshop, and it just sparks them.
That's exactly right. Maybe this is a terrible answer. I think all books can be adapted.
Yeah.
I think they probably can, and it depends on how creative someone wants to be, with maybe some
Mm.
harder books that don't lend so obviously to the visual medium. One of my favorite adaptations is Any Human Heart.
Mm.
And actually, on reading it, I wouldn't first think this is going to make a brilliant adaptation, because it's pretty episodic and it goes on forever. And
Mm.
it's a lot of his internal universe and how he feels about things, but it made a brilliant adaptation.
Mm,
So I still don't know, and I work in the field.
okay.
And Jenny, I'm gonna stop the recording and maybe chat with you for a little bit more. But thank you very much for joining the XpoNorth Digital.
Well, good luck to all those writers. And the great thing about writing and publishing, you know, I can give broad guidelines, but there are exceptions to everything. And one of the exceptions, I was talking about big books with lots of kind of hinterland that people get their teeth into. What was one of the most successful books last year? Normal People by Sally Rooney. A novel about two young people falling in and out of love in Ireland. You know, so
Rules are meant to be broken.
exceptions, yeah, rules are meant to be broken. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny.